And as you know, the Bangalore Science Forum was started in 1962, about 55 years back, conducting a science lecture on every Wednesday. I will always stressing this point, Wednesday. I am not mentioning the date, the month and the year. You come on any Wednesday, there will be one science lecture or the other here, that too of a top quality. And then conducting for 40 years, a month-long science festival. Then if you add all of them, today's lecture is 2,772. So, not one hour. And you got all printed invitation, everything. In fact, I was telling him, Sir C.V. Raman, those days, has given more than 4 or 5 lectures. And today, Bharat Ratna Professor C.N.R. Rao has given more than 30 lectures in this platform. And Dr. Balram, Dr. Padmanabhan, without them we can never complete a science festival. All the 40 years they are given. And many people, Dr. Nigeshi, Jules Hoffman, and all of them have given lectures. And like that we have built up this forum. This lecture, the 2772nd lecture, within minutes shortly going to be delivered by Dr. Krushnamegh Kunte, Assistant Professor, National Center for Biological Sciences, on butterfly stories from biology to conservation. Today, on behalf of our institutions and on behalf of you and on behalf of me, I extend a warm welcome to Dr. Krushnamegh Kunte. And he had his education, early education, BSc in botany from University of Pune, India, then joined a very famous institute at Dehradun, Wildlife Institute of India, where he had MSc in Wildlife Sciences. Then he went to Texas at Austin, that is PhD in Ecology, Evolution and Behavior, University of Texas at Austin, PhD thesis title, Evolution of Sex-Limited Mimicry in Swallowtail Butterflies. I can understand only a butterfly, nothing else. No? So much of pinpointed things. In fact, I would appreciate him. That too, I have gone to USA at Austin, he has done that one. Our advisors are well-known professors, Lawrence Gilbert and Thomas Jugner. And then he started his professional thing in 94 to 96 with the great Indian Institute of Science as academic visitor for Center for Ecological Sciences. I think Raghavendra Gadkar, Madhav Gadgil, all of them have given lectures, coming from that place. Then he became Junior Research Fellow jointly in the Indian Academy of Sciences and Center for Ecological Sciences of Bangalore, commissioned to write a book on peninsular Indian butterflies. Then for 2 years, Junior Research Fellow, Abba Sahib, Garware College and Life Research Foundation, Pune. Then for a year, Consultant, World Heritage Biodiversity Program, Sea Outreach Activities. Then 2006, Teaching Assistant Instructor, University of Texas at Austin. Then 08 Fall, Research Assistant, University of Texas. Then the great place, 9 to 11, Postdoctoral Research Fellow, FA Center for Systems Biology, Harvard University, actually, such an important place. Of course, computer science leadership comes from Stanford, and Harvard is for biology and other sciences, except computer science. Of course, the computer science is quite good also at Harvard, not that I make a, but leadership comes from that place. And then 2012 to present, reader, that is assistant professor at National Center for Biological Sciences here. Actually, I asked him about 2-3 years back. He was so busy and so pinpointed. I tried him some 10-12 times. Every time he was saying that, right now I don't have time. I know that. But suddenly when I asked him this year, he remembered that one and agreed for this lecture, In fact, that shows his focusing completely. And then publications is interesting. Here's a brief summary of that. Citation report. Result found, number of papers in index journals. So careful observe, 1,000 papers, 500 papers, 200, but you just careful results found, number of papers in index journals, 25. Sum of the times cited. How many times is cited? 326, that's important. Because some people write 100 papers, may not be cited even once. What is the use? He has done 25, cited 326. Time cited without self-citation, 314. Citing articles 290, average citations per item 13.04, H index ಅಂತ ಇರುತ್ತೆ, that's important, 11. Cumulative journal impact 120. And also if you want to see profile on Google Scholar, which as of April 2019 lists the citations as 1072, H index of 16 and I-10 index of 24. These are important rather than telling 400 papers, 500 papers. And large number of fellowships and scholarships and awards. Maybe in the early stages, the Ministry of Environment and Forests, Government of India scholarship for Master Degree Program at the Wildlife Institute of India. Then Sri Jayantrao Tilak Award in recognition of his work on Indian butterflies in 2000. 02 K.C. Mahendra Education Trust Scholarship for Higher Studies Abroad. 06 Hartman Merit Scholarship at University of Texas, Austin. 06 Roger Worthington Fellowship, University of Texas at Austin. 6 to 7 University of Texas Continuing Fellowship. Then 07 Hartman Merit Fellowship again at University of Texas. Then 07 to 08 University of Texas Continuing Fellowship. Then 12 to 60 is an important one, Ramanujan Fellowship, Department of Science and Technology, Government of India. Because awards believes firmly in research and teaching. Was instructor at NCBS for spring 2012, assistant instructor, teaching assistant at University of Texas, Austin, and such a brilliant person is here. Before he starts the lecture, I would like to make an announcement about tomorrow's program. I think first we started the thing, and today is 8th, but 9 days are over. We had on second Sunday lecture because we believe Dvitiya Yajna should not happen, The second day was Sunday. We had lecture and also we had wonderful coffee and the millet idli, most probably from Maya. But I can't expect you to come like that every day. And a good tiffin also. I think today it was very good, isn't it? How do you feel? Lecture very much, but I don't worry. Okay? And tomorrow Sunday, please come. We have film show on the subject, that's also important. Then 10/7 is the most important day. Dr. Y.N. Narahari, our old student, but he is occupying a very high question, Chairman of Electrical Science and Physical Science, will speak on blockchains, a disruptive technology for the future of the digital world. I stressed quite a lot. Although this is going to be a different type of technology, which may overtake the social networking, the big data analytics, the robotics, the artificial intelligence, imagine anything. It will overtake all those things. Such a beautiful concept. When I asked Krushnamegh Kunte, he told me, I am doing 6 months the same things I am interested in doing at all. That talk is there on Monday. Kindly attend that talk also. Then next day, Dr. Geeta Vardhan, former director, is speaking on space technology for situational awareness. I think only one woman scientist out of that thing was for don't miss it, actually. That's also interesting. And then other things are there, please follow it. And today, again extending warm welcome to Dr. Krushnamegh Kunte, requesting people to that.
Thank you, Professor Ramarao. It's been a pleasure. This is my second time actually, although I'm giving the talk for the first time. So thank you for the kind invitation. It has always been very exciting for me to speak about butterflies, about nature in general, to a general audience, because it just freshens us up a little bit. We are usually in our scientific worlds giving scientific talks, and we sometimes forget how interesting it is and how exciting it is to communicate with non-scientists as well, because at some point we were all non-scientists. And I was inspired by some of the nature camps that I attended, as well as a lot of teachers, both in my school and at my college. So it's always good to step out of big scientific institutions once in a while and interact even at college, school levels, or outside in the broader society. So thank you for this opportunity, and I'd be happy to keep coming year after year to speak at this forum.
Thank you, sir.
So I'll start with some butterfly stories, and eventually we'll talk a little bit about conservation and some other aspects that I would like to highlight. So I'll start with.
This is the point. This is the point.
So I'll start with some stories of biology, mainly because most of the time when you hear about butterflies or any organisms in general, you don't hear so much about the naturalist itself, which makes them pretty interesting organisms. And of course, there is a lot of scientific work. I won't talk about my own work, and I will certainly not use any jargon. I'll try to make this as simple as possible so that I can engage with everybody. But if you have any questions, you can of course ask me during or after the talk, and perhaps we'll talk about these things later. So often people ask me, why do you study butterflies? What do butterflies do for us? Or what's the use of studying butterflies? And one, I could answer this in various ways, and of course I could point out a few things that biology of butterflies has contributed to science and society on the whole. But I will give a different answer, which is borrowing from the great ornithologist Dr. Salim Ali. It's a form of escapism perhaps, but one that hardly needs justification. Everybody loves butterflies, everybody is fascinated by butterflies, and that itself should be good enough for us to talk about butterflies and study about butterflies. Another reason why I like to talk about butterflies and other things that some people might feel are trivial is that as we grow older, we tend to lose a sense of wonder about the natural world. Somehow there's something that happens, some change that happens in us, and we just lose that, which is very unfortunate. By nature, we are very curious organisms, and it's unfortunate if we lose that, which most of us unfortunately do. But there's still a lot to learn, there's still a lot to understand and appreciate, and this kind of talk, I think, does that pretty well. And I will also try to remind you of the fascinating beauty and complexity of life, rendered through stories of butterflies in the next half an hour or so. And this gives you another reason to care about nature and the environment. Alright, so let's start with some stories of biology of butterflies. And the first thing that I want to talk about is survival. You have to realize that butterflies are tiny organisms. And they don't have pretty nasty bites like ants do, or they don't have stings or fangs like wasps and snakes and other dangerous things do. So being a butterfly is a serious business. Everything is trying to eat you, right? So how do you escape all these predators and all these dangers that lurk? And the various ways in which they do that. I'm going to talk about these much more than others, but I might mention a few. The first thing is, of course, camouflage. If you can't be spotted, then you're pretty safe. The second thing is called masquerade, and I will show you some examples of each one of these. Masquerade means you look like something undesirable to your predators. Your predators can see you, but they don't want to eat you. And I will give some really interesting examples of that. The third being, if you are toxic, if you become toxic, and there are some insects that are toxic, then you should advertise it. If you look like everything else, then you might not be recognized as a prey that needs to be avoided. So that kind of advertisement when you become unpalatable, nasty to your predators, is called aposematism. And of course mimicry, which is when you are not protected yourself, but you look like something which is. And I'll give you a few examples of all of these now. Can you spot a butterfly here? Can you try?
Below.
Top, below, okay. What are the other options? there's a butterfly. I'm going to trace its outline, and now let's see whether you can see. The head is here. Here is a wing. That's a forewing. That's a hind wing. And the reason why you can't see is that it's sitting on this bark, and there's a fissure running in the bark, and the markings on the butterfly actually match those markings on the bark pretty well. Can you see it now, or are you still struggling? If you're still struggling, that's how good this butterfly is at camouflage. Right? That even when I'm tracing the outline of this butterfly, you still can't see it. So these are amazing butterflies. This particular species is called common Indian brown, and you would have seen it near your house. I guarantee you, no matter how crowded part of the city you live in, you will have seen this butterfly near your house. They sometimes come to light in the evening. Sometimes you might even see it inside the house. And if you have a small garden, or if you go to a park, you will definitely see it. So this is a fantastic butterfly, which is a master camouflage, and what you see here is that butterfly. So this is what its upper side looks like, and this is what the underside looks like, and the butterfly is sitting there with the wings closed right now. So on the upper side it has these spots which are quite prominent, which you can't miss, but on the underside it looks like a dried leaf, which is why you can't really dried leaf or other plant matter, which is why you can't see. And that's a very common strategy used by different butterflies. Here is another butterfly called orange oak leaf, and like a leaf, you can see it has a midrib. It has this petiole, the stalk of the leaf, a pointed tip, and then like a leaf, some wings or wing-like markings on its wings. It even has these small spots which are transparent or semi-transparent, as if a leaf was eaten by an insect and there is a hole in that leaf. And another remarkable thing about this particular butterfly is that every single individual that you see is unique. You will not find two butterflies which are exactly the same markings. And that is, I'll tell you an interesting reason why that is so. But the pattern that you see here is that the upper sides are always bright. So when the butterfly is flying, which is when it's going to be most conspicuous, at that time those really bright colors will be visible to a predator that might be chasing it. And when a butterfly is chased, it certainly goes and settles down somewhere in the leaf litter, in case of these butterflies, or on a rock or a bark, where they just can't be seen. So predator is left confused because this is what it is following, and certainly it can't see it among all the leaves. So it's a pretty neat strategy to fool its predators. But then what if the predator learns to spot these camouflage butterflies? When a person is not acting very smart, we say, this person is bird bred. You think that birds are stupid. Birds are actually pretty smart, and their vision is also way more acute than ours. So even if we think that we can't spot those butterflies, birds can actually learn to spot insects which are very well camouflaged. So what happens is when birds realize that there is something, some prey which camouflages really well, they develop a search image for that particular pattern. And if they develop a search image, then they can find that insect prey much more easily even when it's camouflaged. So to avoid that, butterflies can become very variable. So the bird cannot have a template which it's trying to find it in its environment. And because there is no search image, a predator might find it really hard to find its prey. And this is what is happening with this common Indian brown. So this is the same butterfly that I showed you earlier, same species, I mean, a different individual. But this looks quite different. It has these eye spots. So these are, we call these eye spots. These are black big spots with a white iris kind of a marking and a yellow rings around that. And each one of these butterflies is what we call a dry season form of the same species. So all these butterflies that look so diverse is all one species, which we know from studying it for a long time in various ways. You see that some are more yellowish brown, others are more grayish, some have lines on them, others don't have any lines on them, but they might have white dots, others might just have a little bit of marking but nothing else. But in almost every single one of these cases, you will see that a butterfly which is brown sits in brown leaf litter, a butterfly which is more reddish brown sits in leaf litter which is that color, and butterflies which are more dark brown will sit on more dark background and so on. And this is a butterfly which is on green background because it got flushed out. It got scared when I was walking in the forest, flew off when I sat on a green leaf, which is where I photographed it. But imagine spotting that on a forest floor. So this is a close-up. This is as tight a close-up as you can get of a butterfly. But imagine you're walking in the forest, you're a predator, and you have absolutely no idea where your prey is. And this is in a huge forest, there's a tiny butterfly that you're trying to catch. That's going to be pretty hard. And that is how well camouflaged they usually are. So that's the trick. You become not only well camouflaged, you also become variable so that your predators really can't find you. So that's one kind of survival strategy where the idea is that you can get camouflage, you merge into the background so that your predators can't even spot you. The second strategy is actually pretty interesting. It's called Masquerade. It's a regular English word that we use in a special context in ecology. So Masquerade means that you go off as something else or somebody else in place of humans. So if you put on the makeup, wear different clothes, you can take up a different identity, and that is what masquerading is in our case. What butterflies do, and especially caterpillars and pupae do, is that they start looking like twigs and bird droppings, which of course their bird predators don't want to eat. So here is a twig, and these two things that are popping out are pupae of butterflies. They're not broken sticks, even if they look like broken sticks. And that is pretty amazing. And these pupae are so convincing as broken twigs that I had these caterpillars one time. This butterfly is called common linnets. Usually not a very common butterfly around here, but sometimes you get some stragglers in Bangalore, you might even see it around here. In the Western Ghats, if you go to the evergreen forest or the hills, there that species is much more common. I had a few caterpillars in my lab a few years ago, and I kept them in a small cage where I was giving them food, and then they grew up. They grew to the full size, and then the first caterpillar pupated, which is this, and this is the stitching out of the cage that you see. So this is a pupa just like this. This, since it didn't have its twig, it just pupated on the side of the cage. The second caterpillar, which was ready to pupate, this is a caterpillar. It went round and round and round in the cage, didn't find a twig except this thing, and just made a pupa on top of that. So even the same caterpillars might get fooled, and that's a pupa that is formed. So there's a broken twig adding on to a broken twig, which is pretty interesting. But there is another way, and this is involving a little bit of camouflage as well. This is pupa of what's called a common butterfly, and it's usually green when it's made among green foliage, but it turns brown and mottled when it is made on tree bark or other places where it doesn't have greens around it. So the same species, the same caterpillar of that species can either turn into a green pupa or a brown pupa depending on what's in its environment. How do they know what's in their environment? They don't have very sharp eyes like we do or like other butterflies do. But somehow they sense whether their environment is more green or more brown. And then accordingly they switch to one particular color or another. Very few insects can switch coloration like that. This is one of those species. And that itself is pretty interesting. The third thing that I talked about, the third strategy that I talked about is called approximately mimicry. And this might come as a surprise to some of you because you might not know that some butterflies are toxic. Usually if we see butterflies, it's something that's completely harmless. But there are some butterfly species which are poisonous. And they're not poisonous in the same way that some plants are, where you touch them and you get a skin allergic reaction. And they're also not toxic like snakes or wasps, which might bite or sting you and you get the poison inside your body. What they do is that these butterflies evolve to sequester, meaning gather all the toxic compounds from leaves of the plants on which the caterpillars feed. And as the caterpillars feed on these plants, they store all these toxins from the plant in specialized tissues on their in their body. There is a caterpillar of one of the species that's quite common around Bangalore. It's called the plain tiger butterfly. And it's called plain tiger because this is what the butterfly looks like. There's another one called striped tiger. It has black stripes on its body. This one doesn't have that. It's more plain compared to that. So this plain tiger butterfly looks like this and it's on stage. And the reason why this is a very strikingly patterned caterpillar is that it feeds on a plant called Courtship. It has big leaves, milky sap. It's a very common plant if you go to dry areas around Bangalore. So this caterpillar feeds on that plant. This plant has toxins called a class of compounds which are called cardiac glycosides. They affect heart rate, which is why they're called cardiac. And glycosides is this group of compounds which is toxic to vertebrate prey. So cows will never, cattle will never eat this. Goats sometimes eat this plant, but cows will never eat this plant because it's toxic to them. And the caterpillar basically keeps all these toxins just under its skin. So if a bird predator eats it, that bird predator is going to vomit. It will affect its heart rate and then take that caterpillar. So if a predator eats several of these caterpillars in a row, they can even die if they continue to feed or if they continue to force feed them. So the caterpillar is toxic and it's advertising its toxicity with these very bright colors which any predator can quickly notice. And the butterfly that comes out is also pretty brightly colored and strikingly patterned to advertise its toxicity. So these toxic species are not only chemically protected, but they also advertise this using bright colors and contrasting patterns, which stand out on the background when these caterpillars and butterflies are resting, which helps the predators quickly spot them and then avoid them. And then there is this last strategy that I'm going to talk about called mimicry. So there are some butterflies which are palatable to their predators, meaning if their predators, birds, lizards, other things, if they eat these butterflies, they're going to be perfectly fine. It's a perfectly good prey. But just because they look like these nasty butterflies, toxic butterflies that predators are going to avoid, birds are not going to eat those butterflies either. And that is called mimicry, and that's an amazing adaptation. And you don't see it only in butterflies, it's a very general phenomenon. And some of you might have actually noticed this. Sometimes you're in a garden and something that looks really dangerous, like a wasp. In this case, this is a wasp, but there are some flies, there are spiders that look like wasps, there are spiders that look like ants, there are praying mantids which can't really defend themselves very well against large predators. They look like ants which are quite ferocious and live in groups. So you have all sorts of organisms. In the first row you have things that are what we call defended species, meaning that there are some kind of chemical defense because of which predators won't touch them. Once they know that this is bad for them and this is overeating it in the future. So you have poisonous snakes. This is a particular species called coral snake. Quite a deadly snake. There is still no anti-venom to this particular snake bite. These snakes usually don't bite, but if they bite you, there's really nothing that can save you from that. Most of the time though they're underground or in forest where they won't come in contact with you. But this is something that a lot of predators love not to touch, and then there's a similar snake. Then there's this beetle which is packed with really deadly chemical toxins, and then there's a moth which mimics that. You have of course ants. And have you seen this thing? Do you know what this is? What is it? Spider. So these two things look pretty similar, but this is a spider which has evolved to look like that particular ant. The ant is called beaver ant. They're all over. If there's a big tree around here, you probably have almost 15 ants there. They're pretty large ants, about 1 centimeter or slightly less than 1 centimeter long. And then the spider has completely changed its appearance to look like that ant, because these ants are always in their hundreds and thousands. So usually predators won't mess around with these, because if one ant is caught, immediately there's a distress signal given out by this ant that's attacked, and then other ants quickly come running and they find out the predator. So because most predators tend to stay away from these beaver ants, the spider has over probably thousands and hundreds of thousands of generations has evolved to look like that ant, so that predators won't touch that. They'll be fooled by their appearance. Birds will be fooled by the appearance of these organisms to look like this. And this particular kind of mimicry was proposed by a person called Bates, which is why this is called Batesian mimicry, and that's quite common. On any given day, if you go to a nice garden anywhere in Bangalore or outside, you will see some toxic species and also some mimicry species. That is how common it is. There are thousands upon thousands of species now known, which are both toxic and mimetic. So these are really common strategies, very common in butterflies as well. And it's a classic example of adaptation by natural selection. If you have come across those terms in your zoology textbooks or classes, but I'll very briefly explain what that is. So this is the same butterfly that I showed you earlier, the plain tiger butterfly. This is a very common insect-eating bird called bee-eater, small green bee-eater. And of course the bee-eater wants to eat insects, which are going to be nice for it. And the butterfly of course doesn't want to get eaten. But because it's a toxic butterfly, the bee-eater shouldn't be eating them. And once the bee-eater has learned to avoid that particular species based on prior experience, the way that works is when bird babies start to fledge, they start observing what their parents are feeding them, and when they're independent, they start hunting everything that they can find. So as they go through their environment trying to eat any kind of insect prey that they can find, they learn that certain things don't taste well, certain things will make them sick, and therefore they learn to associate a particular way an insect prey looks and what its effect was when it ate it. It's almost like kids learn to hate coloration, bitter gourd. Once they have experienced it, they will always find smart ways like hiding it under a katori so that they think that they've finished their lunch when they've actually not. Right? So there are all sorts of things that you learn. So these bird babies will learn not to eat certain things after they have learned something is not nice. Beyond that stage, there is some kind of mutual understanding almost between the predator, which doesn't want to eat something that's going to make it sick, and the butterfly doesn't want to get eaten because that's its life, which is then gone. So because of that autosomatic pattern, that warning pattern, now there's a mutualistic relationship between an experienced bird, which knows that toxic butterfly, and the butterfly which doesn't want to get eaten. But then you have an interesting parasitism. So Batesian mimicry, I mentioned that it's organisms which are not defended themselves, trying to look like organisms which are defended against predators. And here is a system. In this system, you have this parasite which looks exactly like this butterfly or nearly like that butterfly. And it's parasite in the sense that it's not toxic itself, but it shows to the bird, it appears to the bird as if it is toxic, and therefore the bird won't touch it. So a bird will miss its meal just because of this mimic, and a toxic butterfly is in trouble because if this becomes too frequent, then the bird is going to be confused. It will try to eat every time it encounters something like this. So sometimes even this toxic butterfly is going to get tasted once again, which is not good for that butterfly. So in that sense, this is a parasitic relationship of this butterfly onto this mutualistic system that has evolved. And interestingly, so these are all real life examples. These are not just pictures that I'm showing. I told you this is a plain tiger butterfly and a small green beetle. This species is called ten-eyed eggfly. And the reason it's called eggfly is that it has these round white spots on its wing in the male. So this is a male of the same species, this is a female, and they look nothing like each other. It's pretty interesting, pretty amazing in fact, how you have the same species looking so different in terms of wing coloration. The females fly differently from the male and so on and so forth. So when a bird is confused between these two things, it would rather eat the male, which doesn't look like any toxic butterfly, and not touch these two. That's how mimicry works, and that's a very, very interesting application. And there's pretty tremendous diversity in this particular strategy. In each one of these blue boxes, you have a different kind of a mimic. In some, both males and females look like each other. This is a male symbol, this is a female symbol. This is how we usually represent males and females in biological literature. So you have male and female looking exactly like each other. You have some other cases where females look different from the males. And then you have some cases where both males and females have multiple forms. So there is all kinds of morphological variation in this particular system, and that makes it really. You can't hear? I'm pretty stop.
Sound or
I'll maybe just stand here for some time. Okay, so I will just show you one last thing about mimicry before I move on. And this is one of the most critical examples of mimicry that I know of. Unfortunately, unlike the previous examples, this will not be seen in Bangalore. We'll have to go to Arunachal Pradesh and Assam and those areas to see this particular butterfly. So this is a butterfly. It's called magpie crow. And this is again a toxic species like that plain tiger butterfly that I told you about. And there's a species of a swallowtail butterfly. It's called great blue mime. Great because it's big, and mime is anything that mimics something else, something that it is not. And blue because it has this blue shade on its wings, blue iridescence on its wings. So you have this butterfly which looks exactly like this magpie crow. And this is a male, that's a female. As you will notice, the magpie crow, the upper side is darker and the side is paler, which is what the great blue mime looks like as well. But then there's another species in its environment in the same habitat. This is called the striped blue crow. These two butterflies belong to the same group, but they look completely different. In this butterfly, you have much more brilliant blue iridescence on the upper side. And on the other side, you don't have that. And this is the female of the same species. It has white stripes on its wings. So the male and female look very different. And the upper side and underside of the male looks different. So the same butterfly that I told you about, the great blue mime, now has another form in the same populations of the type, in which the male looks like the male of this species and the female looks like the female of that species. So just imagine how this all evolved. You have one butterfly which has an opportunity to make this or that, and then you have an opportunity to either look like a male of that or a female of that species, and then within that single species you have these three forms based on whether you are a male or female, whether it's your upper side or underside, you have a completely different wing pattern. Isn't that pretty astounding? And this is not an isolated example. I can give you dozens upon dozens of examples where such a complex wing pattern has evolved, all to just escape predation. So predation is a very, very serious thing for these butterflies, as I mentioned, and these butterflies have evolved to escape predation in various ways. Alright, the second act that I talk about is courtship in color. Once butterflies have taken care that they don't get eaten up by their predators, the next big thing in their life is to find a mate, find a partner that they can impress in their environment. And then if it's a female, it's going to get mated and then the eggs before it dies. And a male dies in many cases shortly after mating, or it depletes its energy reserves enough that it's going to not survive as much as perhaps a female, which is going to find those plants and eggs. And this is serious business, as I see a lot of young people in the audience and others who might remember better days, that this occupies a lot of our thinking and a significant part of our life, right? The same is true of insects, but in their case, it's even more. Their life is short. Within that short period of time, they have to find a nice mate that they are happy with. In case of males, it often means a large female which can produce a lot of eggs. In case of females, it means a young male which has a lot of resources, and I'll mention what kind of resources the females are going to look for. And they also want a male which is fresh, and therefore it has better colors, more striking colors, more prominent colors, more colorful patterns, that kind of things. Butterflies are known to be colorful organisms, right? And probably if you had made a connection with this, they have very prominent colors, because those colors have their functions. Warning their predators is one that I talked about earlier, but of course a lot of these colors are to impress their potential mates. And there is a lot of evolution which has gone into making butterflies really, really attractive, which is why they look attractive to us as well. So butterflies have unusually large wings compared to most other insects, and those colors and patterns have functions from defense to courtship, and these highly enlarged wings actually help them magnify the signal, the color signal that they carry as well. So we looked at this particular butterfly earlier, which uses its colors for defense. There is another butterfly here, which again uses a similar strategy. But then you also have these butterflies, which, as I mentioned, will use their colors in different ways. Now, I'll mention that biology interacts in very interesting ways with chemistry and physics. And usually we don't try to connect these different fields. But I'll very quickly mention that just like our visual system is dependent on the physical environment and the light that travels through the environment that we can perceive, the butterflies and other insects also have a particular visual system that interacts in very specific ways with the physical environment in which they live, which has UV light, it has a lot of other things like polarized light, all of which can potentially be used by insects to impress their mates. And I will skip most of the slide. I don't want to go into the details of the architecture of these insects, but this is a head of a dragonfly, and butterflies have similar heads, very, very large eyes, and then mouth parts, which differ between dragonflies and butterflies. But the main feature of the heads of these insects is really, really large eyes. In this case, this dragonfly has two colored eyes. It's similar in many other butterflies. And this is a close-up of the eye, this particular you see here is bump is a particular lens, and that is how insects see colors. And insects might have dozens to thousands of such units that are called chromatia, and that is what allows them to see color. Now, they cannot see the world around them at very high resolution. So, as humans, for example, we can see things which are tens of kilometers away if you have prominent structures. At the same time, you can see, the eye of the needle or the tip of the needle, something as fine as that. So we have a very acute vision, and we can also see things at very high resolution. We can separate out two grains which are very close to each other as two separate grains. Unfortunately, insects can't do that because the way this particular eye is structured, they can't distinguish between very fine structures. What they're really good at, though, is seeing broad colors, and they're also good at detecting movement. Because of this particular eye structure, and I won't go into the details of what facilitates this, but these butterflies are really, really good at detecting movement. So because of this particular eye structure, they have this compound image. Each lens forms an image, which then in the brain gets integrated into the picture of their surrounding. So what butterflies do is that they use these colors as well as movement. It's not only colors in case of butterfly. Butterfly just doesn't sit and expect to get mating. It's flying. If it sees a male, if it sees a male is going to chase the female, and it will either hover over her if it has really interesting patterns on the underside. It will hover in front of her if he has really interesting upper side. So based on where it's going to look the best, it will choose a spot that's appropriate to display its bright colors, and then this butterfly will then go to the female. The male will go to the female, and this courtship can sometimes go to very, very interesting levels. Here is a butterfly. This is a very common species if you go to Himalaya or other latitudes or altitudes. This is called coleus in various parts of the world. They are called clouded yellows because they have this yellow-orange color. So this is what the butterfly looks like to our naked eyes, or rather to our human vision. This is under natural light. So this is a male, that's a female. Female is duller, and it also has more spots on the wings. Now humans can't see UV light, right? But if you shine a UV light on these butterflies and use special lenses which capture UV light, this is what a butterfly looks like. So from the left side, UV light has been reflected. What looks blue here is UV reflection. So if you look at the males and females, the coloration is more or less similar. But if you look at the female has no UV reflectance. So in this species, UV reflectance is one particular kind of signal which is unique to a male, and it uses that while coating the female. So here's the really cool part. In humans, for example, if you see somebody who's well-dressed, who wears expensive clothes, you know that person has more money. You look at somebody, a person, you know that person has a handsome face, or a beautiful figure, or has some other attractive features. So you look at that and you immediately see that. Butterflies also use features of other individuals in similar ways. And this is the coolest part. Even if the phenotype is the same, that the strength of that phenotype of the appearance changes. So the youngest butterflies have the most bright UV reflectance. Older butterflies lose that, and then females of course don't have reflectance. So based on how intense the UV reflectance is, a butterfly can quickly tell whether it's a male or female, whether it's a young male or female, and then of course based on how vigorously it's courting, butterflies through some unknown means can also tell how good a mate that particular and I'll tell you more about what do you mean by a better mate in a bit. So I mentioned this, young males have more UV reflectors, and this is actually something for which I need to go a little bit more into physics of light, so I'll skip that now. But this is something I wanted to spend 5 minutes on. By the way, I don't have a watch here. What time is it? How much more time do we have?
7 o'clock. Don't worry about time side. So
No. All right. So this is something that's quite fascinating. For the last 30, 40 years, biologists have studied these aspects that I'm going to talk about now, and they have found something that is truly stunning. And this is a window into the world of insects and butterflies in particular, which we didn't know about, and until you get to this level of scientific study, you really can't even understand that. And I will talk about a few of these. And this doesn't have pictures, but I know what's coming up, so I just go through those points without advancing slides. So this is something pretty interesting. As I mentioned, butterflies not only have a very prominent color signal, they also have movement. They can fly, they do fly, and they can fly in various ways. So male can potentially circle a female, he can potentially hover over or in front of a female, and then sometimes some butterflies also have patches of scent scales, what we call scent scales. So these are specialized scales which carry a particular scent, which again can be species specific, and different males may have different intensities of how they smell. And based on that, a female can learn a lot about its potential mate. So going back to color and motion, depending on how male is courting, a female can understand whether that is going to be a good male for its babies. Now, unlike humans, unlike birds that you mostly see around, butterflies don't take care of their young ones. After the eggs are laid, the female flies off. It will never see them again. But the provision the eggs in various ways. They will put them in on leaves in places where the predators can find them. In case of toxic butterflies, they coat certain tissue inside the eggs with toxins, which will prevent tiny predators, tiny predators ranging from ants to wasps and other things that can eat these eggs. So these toxins are strong enough to keep these small predators off. So in various ways, females try to protect the eggs. But we also know that as a caterpillar, a butterfly mostly eats vegetation. It doesn't get too many proteins. It doesn't get too many other specialized nutrients that it requires to make a lot of eggs. So this is what happens. Depending on how vigorously a male is courting, and we don't know exactly how females gauge this, but experiments have shown that based on the intensity of the courtship, a female chooses a male, and males that court more intensively typically invest a lot in that particular mating. And the way they invest is, unlike humans, which during mating, only sperm, humans in general, most organisms, sperm are passed on from male to female, and then a female uses those sperm to fertilize its eggs, and then those eggs develop into embryos. In case of butterflies and many other invertebrates, there is a small package that a male passes on, not just sperm. And that package also has nutrients, which is pretty interesting. And these nutrients actually contain these rare nutrients that this package contains rare nutrients that a female butterfly has not had access to as a caterpillar. At which stage it has accumulated all the energy it requires to make eggs and then breed. So what happens is that the males gather all these nutrients that a female doesn't usually have access to, and then pass on these nutrients to the female during mating as a package of nutrients and sperm. And a female somehow knows which male is going to pass on a bigger sperm or what. this package is called as compatible. So this package is really something that determines whether a female is going to get a lot of trips from the male or not. And that's again something that you probably have EQ runs to, especially young folks, when you're courting, you certainly treat each other a lot more than when you're not. So this is the same kind of thing in butterflies, which happens in very different ways because butterflies are very different creatures than us. But the idea is basically the same. I will skip this part as I mentioned, and this is what's happening. So this is how the males gather up all the nutrients that they want. This was a rock in the middle of a stream in Arunachal Pradesh. There is a national park called Nandapa National Park. Really wonderful forest. If you have a chance to visit there, absolutely do. So on this rock, this brown part that you see was dropping of a large animal. And this was probably either a civet or an otter, something that had eaten a crab. And crabs is something that just drives butterflies mad. So whenever you have these crushed up crabs or prawns and sometimes fish from scats of small predators, what happens is that these, let's say this is a crab, gets completely pushed up inside the body of that predator, and then it's excreted out, but there's still a lot of half-digested part of that crab. So what you see here are all these male butterflies which have gathered up on this rotting crab basically, which has passed through the gut of this particular predator, and what they're doing is that they're picking up all the proteins and then some salts that they can find in this rotting crab. So they will pick up this and they will just selectively digest things that they want for themselves, and then other nutrients that they want to pass on to the female, they will sequester them away, and instead of using them as energy for themselves, they will just pack this along with the sperm as they're passing on this package to the female. So all these butterflies that you see here, not a single one of them is a female. They're all in the open, they're vulnerable, so these butterflies, female butterflies, just want to stay away. So they will be somewhere in dense vegetation where predators can see them. And all these male butterflies are gathering in big swarms, they're flying around, they're very conspicuous. A lot of them die actually, trying to get these nutrients. But those which are lucky, which end up gathering a lot of nutrients, they pass these on to the female after a vigorous courtship, and those are the boys that get the girls in butterflies. So this is a very interesting, this whole thing is called nuptial gifts. So whatever male passes on to the female during mating in this manner, that's the nuptial gift. It's a wedding gift in a way. So as I said, butterflies are very different kind of creatures than we are, and they have very interesting ways, even if they parallel some of the things that we do in very different ways. Anyways, these parts I've talked about, so I'll skip that. Now, as I mentioned, I was going to talk about two stories about biology of butterflies, about lives of butterflies. I'll finish that, and before I end this in the next 5 minutes, I want to just quickly draw your attention to something which is not right. This is something you probably hear about a lot. India is a developing country. We have had tremendous natural resources, including forests, grasslands, various kinds of habitats, where there has been really tremendous biodiversity. But because of various reasons, and because the population is growing, because India is developing, we have a lot of destruction happening around us right now. There's widespread habitat loss, habitat degradation, and fragmentation. We're using a lot more pesticides now. And these are things that affect biodiversity a lot, and of course it affects butterflies a lot as an outcome. So we have biodiversity around us, all around us, and whatever we do here sitting in Bangalore affects what happens to butterflies really far away. And this particular picture is from Sikkim, where you have modern kind of agriculture as well as habitations right next to forests which are affecting this. And a lot of dams are coming up in these places. Electricity from which comes to Bangalore. So don't think that you don't affect something really far off in lands where we have really amazing borders. But there is hope. If we know that we have a problem at hand, then we are willing to do something. So I just wanted to highlight that butterflies have these amazing lifestyles, but we also have a lot of species which are endangered and potentially on the road of extinction if you keep using forests like this. So what are we going to do about this? I have a very short list of the kinds of things that you can do, and I'll start with something that's closer to home. Something that's around you is much easier to participate in than what you're going to do and see and understand. So there is a very interesting experiment running in Bangalore for the last 5 years, and this is in the area of what we call citizen science. There's a group called Bangalore Butterfly Group, Bangalore Butterfly Club, really, BBC is what we call it. These are people from all walks of life, from professional scientists to corporates, teachers, students, housewives, retirees, all kinds of people who have come together. Here is a selection of those people. This person works in a company, this Medara is now a student. In Bangalore, he is an IT guy, and then some students and teachers. So we have all kinds of people. These are some of the people that have been quite active in that group. And these are people like you. They're not professional scientists. They haven't dedicated their lives to working in nature conservation or biodiversity. But they have generated a massive data set of butterfly abundance across these years in various parts of Bangalore. And this is the kind of information that goes a very long way. And what this is an example of kinds of things that you could do for biodiversity around you. So first thing I would say is get involved, meet your neighbors, colleagues, forest officers, local politicians, talk to them about biodiversity conservation, start a butterfly garden. This is a garden city, and you have other garden cities like Mysore, Karnataka. This is a fantastic state in which to start this kind of endeavors. And butterfly garden is very easy. If you have a garden like the one I just saw on my way to the college here, you can easily plant trees which attract butterflies and host caterpillars for these butterflies. So this is something that we can easily do. Spray pesticides, and don't spray if you can afford that. And of course, learn about natural history. Information is power, and when you get connected to nature, of course, you feel like you are guardians of things around you, and that you should care about that and protect nature in many ways. And you can, of course, contribute to the Butterflies of India website. It's a fantastic website. I will give you the URL. It's called ifoundbutterflies.org. ifoundbutterflies stands for Indian Foundation for Butterflies. So this is that website for each species in Bangalore. For example, we have a species page, and then we have pictures of the butterflies, which show upper side, underside, various forms. You can also see where that particular species has been recorded, so you can see maps of that species. You can see caterpillars, pictures of caterpillars, the host plants on which the caterpillars feed, the plants on which they take nectar. So there's tremendous amount of information here. So everything that I've said today interests you, please go to this website and get more information there. Now, this is the end of my talk about butterflies. Over the years, I've discovered that the best way to end a butterfly talk is to shut up and show you some really stunning butterflies, which is what I'm going to do now. So I will not try to explain what these butterflies are or give you their names. I'm just going to silently let you appreciate the beauty and colors of these butterflies, and then I will stop. Thank you very much for more about the scientific work that we do, especially students might be interested in that. My lab website is Biodiversity Lab. If you search my name, this website comes up. It's biodiversitylab.org. So there you can read my papers, learn more about our research, and a lot of other cool things that we do.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Really, the experience like Bhumi. It was such a wonderful talk, sir. On behalf of Bangalore Science Forum and our of us here, I express my sincere thanks to Dr. Krushnamegh Kunte. On Science Subject, on 10th July, talk by Dr. Y. Narahari, Chairman of Electrical Sciences, Indian Science. We will be speaking on blockchain, a disruptive technology for the future digital India. Digital world. The session is now open for discussion.
The first person, young person, the first person, always.
What is the specific reason you mentioned that why only male butterflies should collect their nutrients and then pass the same to female butterflies to sperm? Is there a specific reason? And why can't female?
So there are two reasons that I will very quickly mention. One is that that behavior that I talked about, that's called mud-puddling. And for that, most of the time, butterflies have to be out in the open, which is a dangerous place to be. And females, as I mentioned, tend to stay in slightly protected places. That's one superficial answer. The real answer is that females can afford to do that. They know that males will come and court them. And they, as you know, boys are way more desperate than girls. They're just screwing butterflies as well. And also, in many organisms, males typically court and females typically choose. Now, this was a classical traditional understanding. Now we know there are lots of cases where both males and females court each other, and males are as choosy about their partner as females are. So that is something which is more of a more recent understanding. But even in those cases, we usually know that males typically hold territories which have a lot of resources. Males is the typically courting sex, and they are the ones who take more risk. As you know, most of the times when you see a young person doing stupid things, it's men who are doing that. And there is actually an interesting evolutionary reason why males take more risks than women do. It's the same reason in butterflies. So because it's a
Nowadays it is changing now, so even women can take it.
Absolutely. But you still see males doing more stupid things which are more dangerous, but which also typically bring more rewards. Right? So that is the reason why males typically go for these resources. And also because females have a choice between various courting males, typically they can choose whichever male is going to give them more resources. That is the reason why males only do that. There are some species in which, as you mentioned, things are changing and things have changed in nature. Some species. In those species, you see females doing it as much as males. So it's not only one sex in which they do that. But in most species, it's a male which do that.
I have a few questions on behalf of this senior. Yeah, his first question is, how many colors are found?
How many?
Colors are found, colors. And second question is dark colors are found in thickly grown plants? Second question. And his third question is, usually light colors are seen in gardens and nursery where flowers are planted and bushes. And last question is, how long they live, and can we keep at home with nets? These are the questions.
So there's several questions. I will start one at a time, and you might have to remind me.
One by one issue. Yes, repeat the
So
first
what
one.
colors? They have basically any color that you know, every color that you know. There are certain colors which are much more common than others. For example, blues and yellows and blacks and reds are much more common than greens. For some reason, there are not too many green butterflies. So in my slideshow, I showed this green butterfly, the last one. That's one of the few green butterflies in India, completely green in that case. So there are certain colors which are much more common, but essentially you will see all colors. And outside the vision of range of color vision of humans, butterflies can also see UV patterns, and of course they can. Some of them can see near infrared, which again we can't see. So any all sorts of colors. What was the second question?
The second question is dark colors are found in thickly ground
So this I will mention just in a few lines, but this is something that has been studied a lot. So there is no single simple answer. I will have to tell you a few more stories to answer that fully. So very briefly, what I will mention is that typically butterflies that occur in colder places tend to have darker colors because darker areas of the wing are supposed to heat up faster. And in a cold place, there's an advantage. You can heat up faster, you can absorb sun's energy faster, and then you can you become active enough quickly that you can fly down. Remember, butterflies are cold-blooded organisms. Unlike us, they can't maintain their body temperature. So if it's cold, they get so cold that they settle down and they can't move. So they have to warm up before they become active. So in cold places, butterflies tend to be darker. In open places, dry places, hot places, they will tend to be lighter because that will take a lot of sun's energy heating off of their wings. And then colors is something else. So colors, as I said, have different functions, and some functions are more common in males versus females, on upper side versus underside. Typically, upper sides tend to be much more colorful than underside. So there is this partitioning of how colors are arranged on the plugin, depending on what that color, what the function of that color is in the life of a butterfly. So there are various ways. And the last question, how long a butterfly lives, that depends on the species. Small butterflies live for anywhere between a few days to perhaps a week or two. Larger butterflies might live between about 2 weeks to, in some cases, as much as a few months. But typically that's a lifespan, a few days to a few weeks. Some butterflies can live for 7-8 months. Most butterflies live for not more than 2 weeks.
You mentioned that butterflies need the toxins in the plant and preserve themselves to safeguard or to defend against the attack. Suppose the butterfly, the snake also is shown like this. If it comes and attacks the butterfly, bites that. What happens to the pH?
What happens to
the butterfly? Bite something, it protects from the snake and other small prey, and
So
what happens to the other species?
butterflies cannot bite. They have a proboscis, so they can only suck liquid food from that. So butterflies really don't have any defenses except the chemical defenses that they have. Some of the species have evolved. So the way their toxicity works is the predator has to eat that butterfly before it can feel the effects of the toxin. But if you look at some species, what happens is they have evolved specialized glands through which frothy materials or frothy liquid is exuded. And this is found quite a lot in moths and some beetle groups. So what happens is when these insects are handled by a predator, these things will start putting out these secretions from the glands, which either have a very strong smell, or they might be sticky, or they will have some physical chemical properties which lets the predator know that these things are bad. And then the predator will leave them alone. But that is not what happens in butterflies most of the time. The predator has to taste the butterfly before it learns that that species or that individual is toxic. But some butterflies, especially the toxic ones, can also handle a lot of rough treatment. So if a predator catches it and pecks at it once or twice, that may be enough for the predator to get the smell of the species of that individual. Remember that it had tried this out, it did not taste well or it made it sick, and then it will let go, and butterflies can handle that kind of treatment. They will still be able to fly, they won't be seriously damaged, that they can't fly and they'll die. So that's how they can survive some of these attacks.
So we see the butterflies come and sit on the food we eat, and sometimes the concern sits on the infant and small children. They bite. Is any harmful to the?
No, they can't bite. They can't bite. Butterflies can't bite. Other insects can, but butterflies cannot bite. Because they have a proboscis.
Why can't butterflies think?
Yeah.
Why can't butterflies think us like us?
Why they don't?
Why don't they think like us?
Why don't they think like us? That's a very good question. And again, this could go on for hours, but very quickly I'll mention several things. A, their brains are relatively smaller, their world is relatively simpler, and they don't have long lifespans where thinking might help them a lot. They have a lot of instinctive behaviors, and that is something that's true in most organisms which are short-lived. A lot of the things that they do are instinctive rather than learned, and something that involves thinking. That's one way to answer your question. The second way to answer your question, and this is a very active area of research in biology, why is it that some organisms are smarter, they have more brain power than other organisms? And one answer that has emerged from studies of lots of organisms is that organisms which have very complex social structures, where individual recognition is required or is beneficial, and then repeated interactions and certain kind of interactions happen a lot more, they tend to be slightly more. So ants, for example, have a lot of social interactions, but they are not smart like us. But dolphins are smart like us, elephants are smart like us. But some of the insects are also more smart than other insects. And this might be because these social interactions require greater sensory modalities, more acute computational powers, and so on and so forth. So there's one theory that humans have become so smart and so cunning as well because they want to take advantage of other individuals and basically benefit themselves at the expense of others. So this theory basically states that we have become smart not because of any other reason, not because we want to solve the problems of the world or understand the problems of the world and we want to, understand mathematics, but we want to take advantage of other people, and therefore we have become over the evolutionary history smarter and smarter with every passing generation to understand what this other person is doing, and there's this whole concept of second order and third order consciousness. And if you want a terrific speaker for one of your science forum talks, I would recommend Dr. Anindya Sinha, who's at NIAS. He studies monkeys, and he's one of the best speakers you will find. And the topic he usually presents is also quite close to our heart because
What is his name?
it's monkeys. Anindya Sinha. Yes, I can give you his phone number, email address later if you remind me. So He explains this, of course, much better, but this second, third level, second, third order consciousness basically is that knowing what's in the environment and knowing what the other person is thinking is one thing. Knowing what the other person is thinking and then convincing that person that you are thinking something else, to convince that person that you basically take advantage or influence your opinion is a very different level of consciousness than just knowing that this is my species, something else is not my species, this is a friend that's not a friend, and so on and so forth. So humans have evolved this kind of consciousness and this kind of brain power in that social setting. And butterflies don't have that kind of complex social settings.
Okay, Priyam sir.
Thanks a lot for such a wonderful session. It was very informative.
So,
So I have three corrected questions. Which I
first question.
does butterflies migrate? If they migrate, then how far they migrate considering the span of their life?
Okay, let's stop there. One question at a time and then we can ask the next one. So butterflies do migrate, not all species do, but a few do, and I'm pretty sure each one of you, if you have spent any time in Bangalore, you have seen a butterfly migration. So there are two migrations which happen every year and which are quite prominent. They also pass through the town, so you have seen it, no matter where you live. And this is the time when they happen. The first migration is of what are called milkweed butterflies. The plain tiger butterfly that I showed with a very strikingly patterned caterpillar, that group of butterflies migrates, and that migration is actually in this season. These butterflies mostly occur in the Western Ghats, in the hills, and then when the monsoon is in force, they can't really move very well in these evergreen forests and monsoons. So they come to the plains. So monsoon rains basically push them for the east. And after the monsoon is over, sometime between October and December, these butterflies, their progeny actually, the babies of these butterflies that migrated to the plains, will then go back to the Western Ghats. So that's a butterfly migration that happens twice a year in two directions. And it happens every year, except last year it didn't happen, at least not the way it usually happens. Possibly because the rains were very chaotic last year. It rained heavily at times and did not render